The planet, officially named XT-77b, was a green jewel against the black velvet of space. From the viewing port of the survey vessel Morningstar, it looked peaceful. To the crew inside, it looked like a promise. Captain Sue watched the planet grow larger on the screen. He was a man with a face lined from years of hard decisions, his black hair streaked with gray. He had seen many worlds, but few this beautiful, and in his experience, beauty often hid danger. He sipped his bitter coffee, his eyes narrowed. "The initial scans are perfect, Captain," said Jin, the ship's xenobiologist. Jin was young, his face full of excitement. He pointed at the data flowing on a screen. Breathable air, stable climate, abundant liquid water. "The life signs are incredible." "It's a biologist's dream," Sue grunted. "A dream can turn into a nightmare fast." "Any signs of tool use? Structures? Radio signals?" Hana, the communications expert, shook her head. Her focus was absolute as she listened to the sounds of the planet. "Nothing, Captain. No signals of any kind. But the background bioacoustics are complex. There's a lot of sound down there. It's like a forest full of song. That's what I mean," Jin said, his voice eager. "It's a thriving, complex ecosystem. This could be the most significant find of our careers," Sue finally nodded. "All right. Standard landing protocol. Full environment suits. No one takes off their helmet. We observe, we take samples of plants and soil, we leave." "Understood?" Jin's smile was so wide it almost touched his ears. "Understood, Captain." The shuttle detached from the Morningstar and cut through the atmosphere. The ride was smooth. When the doors opened, the world outside was like a picture from an old storybook. The air was sweet and clean, even through their helmet filters. Giant trees with purple leaves reached for a yellow sun. Small flying creatures with 4 wings zipped between glowing flowers. The sound was a gentle mix of chirps, clicks, and soft melodies. "It's a utopia," Jin whispered, his recorder already active. Sue felt his shoulders relax slightly. Maybe he was getting too old and too suspicious. Maybe this world was just what it seemed. They moved through the forest. Jin cataloged everything, his hands moving quickly. He pointed out the way different plants seemed to support each other, the lack of rot or decay, the harmony of it all. Hana recorded the sounds, trying to find patterns in the beautiful noise. It was Hana who saw it first. A movement in a bush of silver leaves. She held up a hand and the team froze. A small creature hopped out. It was about the size of a cat, covered in soft gray fur. It had 6 delicate legs and large round eyes that shone with a curious intelligence. It tilted its head, making a soft warbling sound that rose and fell like a question. "Amazing," Jin breathed, slowly kneeling. The creature didn't run. It took a hesitant step closer, its nose twitching. Hana smiled inside her helmet. "Its vocalizations are highly structured, Captain. This isn't random noise. This is language." The creature, which they had not yet named, took another step. It seemed to study Jin, then Sue, then Hana. It showed no fear. "Let's take a standard soil sample and move on," Sue said, his voice firm. His instinct was to leave this perfect, fragile thing alone. "But, Captain," Jin argued, his eyes pleading, "this is a first contact scenario. A peaceful one. We have a chance to study a truly intelligent, non-hostile species. We can't just walk away." "Think of the knowledge." Sue looked at the small creature. It was now playing with a fallen leaf, batting it with a delicate paw. It looked harmless. It looked friendly. "The rules are clear, Jin. We observe." "Rules were made for worlds with predators and dangers," Jin countered. "Look around. There are no threats here. This creature is the pinnacle of this ecosystem. We can take it to the shuttle for a few hours. Run some non-invasive scans. No cuts, no probes, just imaging. Then we bring it right back to this exact spot. What harm could it do?" Sue looked at Hana. "Your opinion?" Hana watched the creature. "It seems gentle. Its sounds are kind. I think it's safe, Captain." And Jin is right. The opportunity is incredible. Sue felt the pressure. The scientist in him warred with the soldier. The scientist won. He let out a long sigh. "Fine, 2 hours. In the shuttle's containment field. Full decontamination before we bring it in and before we let it out. Not a minute more." Jin was ecstatic. "Thank you, Captain. You won't regret this." He carefully approached the creature. It watched him, curious. Jin took out a scanner and showed it to the animal, letting it see the soft blue light. The creature warbled again, a happy sound. Slowly, Jin reached out and picked it up. It snuggled into his arms, purring a deep, vibrating purr. "See?" Jin said, his voice full of wonder. "It trusts us." Back in the shuttle, they set up a clear containment field in the cargo area. It was a soft energy barrier that would allow them to observe the creature without it touching anything. They named it Flutter because of the way its fur seemed to move in a breeze that wasn't there. Inside the shuttle, Flutter explored its temporary home. It walked the perimeter, tapping the energy field with a paw. It seemed more curious than afraid. Hana played back some of its recorded sounds, and Flutter would tilt its head and answer with new, more complex warbles. "This is unprecedented," Hana said, her fingers flying over her console. "It's not just repeating. It's trying to communicate. It's adapting its song to mine." Jin started his scans. The initial results were confusing. Its biology is unbelievably efficient. Its cells have an energy output that doesn't make sense. And its brain. "Captain, the neural activity is like a star-going supernova. It's far more than any creature would need just to live." "Maybe that's the price for its intelligence," Sue suggested, watching Flutter. The creature was now sitting calmly, watching them as they watched it. "Perhaps," Jin said, but he looked puzzled. 2 hours came and went. Jin begged for more time. "The neural scans are still compiling, Captain?" "Another hour, please. We're on the verge of a breakthrough." Sue looked at Flutter. It was so small, so peaceful. It had done nothing wrong. It had not scratched or bit or made a single threatening sound. He felt his caution melting away. "1 more hour," Sue agreed. "Then we return it." "No arguments. Thank you, Captain." Jin turned back to his screens, lost in the data. The extra hour passed quickly. The sun outside was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It was time. "All right, pack it up," Sue ordered. "We're taking Flutter home." Jin nodded, a little sadly. He went to the containment field controls to lower the barrier. As he did, Flutter stood up. It looked at Jin, then at Sue, then at Hana. Its large, intelligent eyes seemed to hold a new understanding. And then it happened. A deep, low sound vibrated through the shuttle. It was not loud, but it was powerful. It was not a sound you heard with your ears, but one you felt in your bones. The coffee in Sue's mug rippled. The tools on the table rattled. On the planet below, every sound stopped. The chirping, the clicking, the melodic songs, everything ceased at once. The forest was plunged into a silence so deep and so sudden it was more frightening than any roar. Inside the shuttle, the 3 humans froze. "What was that?" Hana asked, her voice a whisper. "Seismic activity?" Jin guessed, but he looked unsure. Sue looked at Flutter. The small creature was no longer looking at them. It was looking toward the planet, its head cocked. Its friendly, curious demeanor was gone. It was perfectly still, listening. Then, as quickly as it had stopped, the forest noise returned. But it was different now. The melodies were gone. The sounds were sharper, faster, like a million insects chittering a warning. "Let's go," Sue said, his voice tight. "Now." Jin didn't argue this time. He lowered the containment field. Flutter didn't move. It just stood there in the middle of the cargo area, its soft fur and big eyes making it look like a lost toy. But the feeling in the room had changed. The air felt heavy. Jin reached in to pick it up. Flutter took a step back. It was a small movement, but its meaning was clear. It did not want to be touched. The 3 humans stared at the creature. It was no longer just an animal. It was a problem. The gentle, melodic warble it had made before was gone. Now it let out a single, pure, high-pitched note. It was a sound that didn't belong in the friendly forest. It was a sound that cut through the air like a knife. On the shuttle's control panel, a warning light flickered on and off. The main engine, which was in a standby mode, hummed unexpectedly for a second before going quiet again. Sue's instincts, which had been quieted by the planet's beauty, were now screaming at him. He looked at the small, furry creature in his shuttle, and for the first time he felt a chill of real fear. He had made a mistake. A very, very big mistake. The ride back to the Morning Star was silent and heavy. The friendly atmosphere of the planet was gone, replaced by a tense quiet inside the shuttle. Flutter sat in the corner of the cargo area where Jin had placed it, after managing to get it into a transport crate. It did not struggle. It did not make a sound. It simply sat, watching them with its large, dark eyes. The feeling was no longer one of curiosity, but of observation. Captain Sue piloted the shuttle, his hands tight on the controls. He did not look back at the crate. He stared straight ahead at the growing shape of their mothership. Every few seconds, his eyes would flick to the scanner display, checking for any unusual activity from the planet below. There was nothing. The world was as quiet and peaceful as it had been when they first arrived, but the silence now felt like a threat. Jin tried to focus on the data he had collected. The scans of Flutter's biology were still compiling. The files were massive, far larger than they should have been for a creature of that size. He tried to tell himself that this was a good thing, a sign of a complex and wonderful discovery. But he couldn't shake the memory of that deep, vibrating hum and the way the forest had gone silent. He glanced back at Flutter. The creature blinked slowly, its gaze unwavering. Hana was the most troubled. She played back the audio recording of the planet's sudden silence, then the return of the new, sharper sounds. She had spent years learning the patterns of alien communication. The first sounds of the forest had been a symphony. What came after the hum was a cacophony of alerts and warnings. She was sure of it. She also replayed the single high-pitched note Flutter had made. Her software analyzed it but could find no meaning, no pattern. It was just pure, structured sound. A signal. The shuttle docked with the morning star with a soft thud and a hiss of equalizing pressure. The familiar sounds of their ship should have been a comfort. But the usual hum of the engines and the gentle beeps of the computers felt different now. "Get it to the biolab," Sue ordered, his voice low. "Full quarantine protocol. No one touches it without my direct order." Jin and another crew member, a young woman named Mie, carefully moved the transport crate. Flutter remained perfectly still during the entire process. It was placed inside a reinforced observation room in the biolab. The walls were clear, strong polymer, and a sophisticated containment field provided an extra layer of security. It was the safest place on the ship for studying unknown life forms. For the first hour, nothing happened. Flutter explored its new enclosure. It walked along the edges, sniffing the air. It seemed to examine the lights in the ceiling and the vents that provided fresh air. It was behaving like a captured animal, cautious and confused. Jin, watching from the other side of the polymer wall, started to feel better. Maybe he had been imagining things. Maybe the events on the planet were just a strange natural phenomenon. He decided to run a simple life sign scan from the external panel. He activated the sensor suite. The screen lit up, showing Flutter's vital signs. Its heart rate was slow and steady. Its respiration was calm. Then Jin looked at the neural activity graph. His blood ran cold. The readout was a chaotic storm of light and color. It was like watching a billion stars being born and dying every second. No brain, no matter how intelligent, should have that level of activity. It was impossible. It would require more energy than a starship's engine. "Captain, you need to see this," Jin said over the comms. Before Sue could respond, a new voice crackled over the ship-wide intercom. It was Chol, the chief engineer. His voice was calm but confused. "Bridge, this is engineering. We're seeing a minor power fluctuation on Deck 3. Nothing serious, but it's odd. Running a diagnostic." Sue, who was on the bridge, checked his own console. "Acknowledged, engineering. Keep me posted." He walked down to the biolab, his face grim. "What is it, Jin?" Jin pointed a shaking finger at the neural activity monitor. Sue looked at the raging storm on the screen. He didn't need to be a biologist to know that it was wrong. "What does it mean?" Sue asked. "I have no idea," Jin admitted. "It's like its brain is processing more information than our entire ship's computer network." But that's not physically possible. At that moment, the lights in the biolab flickered, just for a split second. Then they returned to normal. "Hana," Sue said into his wrist comm. "Anything from the planet?" Hana's voice came back, tight with tension. "Yes, Captain. I'm picking up a new signal. It's not on any standard frequency. It's a quantum-level fluctuation. Very complex. And it's directed right at us. But can you translate it?" "Working on it. The pattern is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's not a language. It's more like a code. A single repeating data packet." The lights flickered again. This time, the main computer console in the biolab beeped, and a warning message appeared. "Environmental control, Deck 4, minor malfunction." Deck 4 was where the crew quarters were. Sue felt a knot form in his stomach. Coincidence was one thing. This was starting to feel like a pattern. "Chul report," he barked into his comm. "The fluctuation on Deck 3 is gone," Chul replied. "But now we have a pressure sensor fault on Deck 4. The systems are acting twitchy." In the observation room, Flutter had stopped exploring. It was sitting in the center of the room, perfectly still. It was looking straight at Sue and Jin through the polymer wall. Its head was tilted. Hana's voice came over the comm again, sharp and urgent. Captain. The translation. It's through. It's a very simple message. It's just 3 words repeated over and over. What does it say, Hana? Sue asked, his eyes locked on Flutter. The silence on the comm line was heavy. Then Hana spoke, her voice a whisper of disbelief and dread. It says, returned the child. The words hung in the air. Sue looked from the terrifying neural scan to the small furry creature in the enclosure. The child. A cold certainty settled over him. They had not taken a specimen. They had taken a citizen, and its parents were calling it home. Jin, Sue said, his voice dangerously calm. We are returning it now. Prepare the shuttle. Jin, his face pale, nodded and moved to the control panel for the containment field. But as his fingers touched the screen, the entire ship shuddered. A loud clang echoed from deep within the hull, followed by the blaring of a primary alarm. Bridge! Report! Sue yelled. It was Chul's voice that answered, now strained and shouting over the sound of emergency sirens. Captain, main power conduit B has ruptured. We've got a plasma leak in secondary engineering. It's a full system failure. I don't know how it happened. The safeties just didn't work. Panic began to spread through the ship. The lights flickered wildly and a red emergency glow filled the corridors. Sue could feel the artificial gravity waver for a moment. It's not a coincidence, Hana said over the comm, her voice rising. The message came and then the ship started falling apart. Sue made a decision. Forget the shuttle. We'll use an emergency pod. Jin, get the creature, now! Jin, his hands trembling, punched the command to lower the polymer wall in the containment field. The barriers deactivated with a soft hum. The way was open. Flutter stood up. It did not run towards the open door. It did not try to escape. Instead, it took one slow, deliberate step forward. It looked at Jin, then at the open doorway, then back at Jin. Its large eyes held no fear, no anger. They held a cold, calculating intelligence that made Jin's breath catch in his throat. Then Flutter turned its head and looked at the solid polymer wall next to the doorway. It raised one of its delicate 6-fingered paws and placed it flat against the surface. Where its paw touched, the polymer did not crack or break. Instead, it changed. The solid, clear material turned cloudy, then began to flow like liquid, pulling apart at a molecular level. In seconds, a perfect round hole large enough for the creature to walk through had appeared in the wall. It wasn't a violent breach. It was a quiet, terrifying act of reconfiguration. Flutter stepped through the hole it had made into the main biolab. It ignored the 2 stunned humans. It walked to the main lab computer terminal, placed its paw on the metal housing, and the terminal screen went black. The ship-wide comm system crackled. Chul's voice was filled with pure panic. Captain, the plasma leak is spreading. I can't stop it. The fire suppression isn't responding. I'm trapped. Sue stared at the small furry creature that was now calmly disassembling his ship. It wasn't attacking them. It was dismantling their home piece by piece with a quiet, unstoppable efficiency. The message from the planet echoed in his mind. Return the child. They had tried, and now it was too late. The Morning Star was dying. Alarms shrieked through the corridors, a constant scream of metal and failure. Captain Sue stood frozen in the biolab, watching the creature called Flutter. It was no longer an animal. It was a quiet storm of destruction. It did not run. It did not snarl. It walked with a purpose that was more terrifying than any rage. It moved to the door of the biolab and placed its paw on the control panel. The panel did not spark or explode. It simply dissolved, the components melting away like sugar in water. The door slid open. Stop it! Jin yelled, his scientific wonder finally replaced by horror. He grabbed a metal tool from a table and lunged forward. Sue shouted, Jin, no! But it was too late. Flutter did not even turn. As Jin swung the tool, the creature's fur seemed to ripple. A shimmering wave of energy like heat haze surrounded its body. The metal tool passed through the haze and simply came apart in Jin's hand, dissolving into a fine gray dust. Jin stared at his empty hand, his face white with shock. Flutter continued into the corridor. It was heading towards engineering. Chul, get out of there! Sue yelled into his comm. It's coming your way. Chul's voice was ragged. I can't. The blast doors are sealed. I'm trying to reroute power from here to stop the plasma leak. Sue grabbed Jin's arm. We have to get to the escape pods, now. They ran, leaving the biolab behind. The ship was coming apart around them. A light panel on the ceiling exploded, raining glass. The floor shuddered violently. They passed a viewport and Sue saw a terrifying sight. Outside, the green planet of XT-77b looked as peaceful as ever, but from its surface, thin, bright lines of light were reaching up. They were not weapons fire. They looked like glowing vines or roots growing through space, gently brushing against the Morning Star's hull. Where they touched, the ship's armored plates turned black and crumbled away. It was not an attack. It was a reclamation. They reached a junction. The way to the escape pods was to the left. The way to engineering was to the right. From the right corridor, they heard Chul scream. It was a short, sharp sound that was cut off instantly. Sue made a choice. "Go to the pods."
"Get Hana!"
he ordered Jen. "Captain, no. That's an order." Sue roared, and he turned and ran towards engineering. He found Chul in a corridor filled with smoke and the sharp smell of ozone. The engineer was on his knees, clutching his arm. His environment suit was torn, and the metal beneath was not just cut, it was gone, dissolved away along with the flesh of his arm. The wound was clean and bloodless, as if the atoms had simply been deleted. Chul's face was a mask of pain and confusion. "The creature," Chul gasped. "It just walked past me." It looked at the plasma conduit. And the leak? It stopped. It sealed the rupture with its hand. Then it kept walking. Sue helped Chul to his feet. Why would it stop the leak? To save the ship? Chul groaned. "No," Sue said, understanding dawning with a fresh wave of dread. "To keep the ship in one piece. For itself." They stumbled back towards the escape pods. The ship was now eerily quiet. The alarms had stopped. The lights were dim. The Morning Star was a ghost ship, its systems methodically shut down or taken apart. They found Jin and Hana at the escape pod bay. Hana had a portable data drive clutched in her hand. "The logs," she said. "I saved everything." The four of them piled into the nearest pod. Sue hit the launch sequence. With a violent jolt, the pod ejected from the dying Morning Star. Through the small viewport, they watched their ship. It hung in space, dark and silent. Then the glowing vines from the planet wrapped around it completely and began to pull. Slowly, gracefully, the Morning Star was drawn down towards the green world like a leaf falling back to a forest floor. It was not destroyed. It was being taken home. Weeks later, Commander Day of the Galactic Consensus Defense Fleet listened to their report. He was a tall, proud man, his uniform covered in medals from a dozen campaigns. He sat in a clean, bright room on a busy space station, far from the silence of XT-77b. He did not believe them. "A little furry animal took apart your ship?" Day said, a smirk on his face. "It used magic powers to melt the walls? And then the trees from the planet reached up and grabbed you? This is a children's story. A ghost story to cover your incompetence." Sue stood stiffly. "Commander, it is the truth. The creature is a part of the planet. A child. The planet itself is intelligent. It sent a warning. We must not go back." Day laughed. "A warning? From a garden world? Captain, you let your crew die because of a simple animal. Now you are afraid. The Galactic Consensus does not respond to warnings. We give them." He stood up, his face hardening. "I will take the Vengeance Battle Group to XT-77b. I will show this intelligent planet what happens when you attack one of our ships. We will burn its forests and shatter its continents. We will teach them the meaning of fear." Sue felt a cold despair. "Sir, I beg you, do not do this. You are not understanding what they are." "I understand perfectly," Day said. "They are a threat, and threats are eliminated." The Vengeance Battle Group was immense. 5 heavy cruisers led by Day's flagship, the Iron Will. They were ships designed for war, covered in guns and missile ports. They jumped into the XT-77b system with their shields raised and weapons ready. The planet hung below them, green and peaceful. "Scan the surface," Day ordered. "Find any population centers, any energy signatures." The scans came back clean. Nothing, no cities, no factories, no power grids. Just life. Abundant, simple life. "Typical primitives," Day sneered. "They hide in the dirt. Target the largest forest continent. A single orbital strike will show them our resolve." A gunner prepared the plasma cannon. The targeting computer locked on. And then the planet reacted. It did not launch missiles. It did not raise shields. The forest continent they were targeting simply changed. The tops of the giant trees began to glow with a soft green light. The light intensified, gathering at the tips of the leaves. Then, in perfect unison, thousands of these trees fired. They did not fire bolts of energy. They fired lances of pure solidified light. These lances shot up through the atmosphere without disturbing it. They moved with impossible speed, not like weapons, but like growing branches. One of these lances of light touched the iron will. It did not explode on impact. It pierced the ship's powerful energy shield as if it weren't there. It pierced the thick armor hull as if it were paper. It went straight through the center of the ship and out the other side. On the bridge of the iron will, Commander Day had a single second to see a beam of beautiful green light spear through his command deck. There was no heat, no sound. The beam was just there, and where it passed, everything it touched was gone. Vaporized. A perfect, clean hole was cut through the heart of his ship. The iron will split in two. The reactor core exploded, a brief, bright star in the dark space. The other ships in the battle group opened fire. Their lasers and plasma bolts streaked down towards the planet. The trees simply absorbed the energy. The lasers faded into the leaves. The plasma bolts were caught by glowing vines that rose from the oceans and dissipated them harmlessly. Then, the planet spoke. Not to one ship, but to all of them, broadcasting on every frequency and every language known to the galactic consensus. The voice was calm and vast and held no anger. It held only a final terrible judgment. The message was simple. You took a child, you were warned. Now all will learn. The remaining ships tried to flee. They turned and powered their engines. But the vines of light were already there, wrapping around them. They did not pull the ships down. They simply held them. And then the ships began to change. Their metal hulls turned dark, then brown, then green. They sprouted leaves. Their engines fell silent, becoming trunks of strange new trees. In moments, the mighty warships were transformed into silent, floating forests, orbiting the world they had come to destroy. On the space station, Sue, Hana, and Jin watched the live feed go to static. The room was utterly silent. The news spread through the galactic consensus like a virus. Panic erupted. The most powerful battle group in the sector had been wiped out not by a fleet, but by a garden. Worlds demanded answers. Armies were mobilized, but Sue knew it was useless. They were not fighting an enemy they could shoot. They were fighting a consciousness as old as the stars, a mind that lived in every leaf and every stone. They had poked a hive, and now the entire galaxy was about to be stung. The war had begun, and they had already lost. The galactic consensus was in chaos. News feeds showed the same terrifying images. The mighty iron will cut in half by a beam of light. The rest of the battle group transformed into silent, leafy monuments. Worlds that had felt safe behind their fleets now felt naked and exposed. How do you fight an enemy that has no ships, no soldiers, and turns your own technology into trees? On the fringe of consensus space, a different kind of meeting was taking place. The human diplomatic vessel Odyssey was a sleek ship, designed for peace, not war. In its quiet observation lounge, Captain Sue, Hana, and Jin stood before a small group of humans. They had been brought here as the only survivors, the only experts on the enemy that no one understood. They told their story again to a new audience. Captain Tay, the leader of the Odyssey, listened with his arms crossed. He was a calm man with thoughtful eyes. Next to him was Yuna, the ship's xenopsychologist. She did not look at screens or data pads. She watched the faces of the three survivors as they spoke. Jin explained the impossible biology. Hana played the haunting audio of the planet's silence and the simple, terrible message, "Return the child." Sue described the methodical, peaceful destruction of his ship. He finished with the image of Commander Day's fleet being dismantled by a world. When they were done, the room was quiet. A consensus military advisor who had joined via hologram spoke first. His voice was sharp with frustration. "It is clear we need a new military strategy," the advisor said. "We must develop planetary-scale energy shields. Find a way to block this biological energy, bombard the planet from beyond the range of its weapons." Yuna shook her head slowly. She had not spoken until now. "You are not listening," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You are hearing the words, but you are not understanding the meaning." The advisor scowled. "What is there to understand? They are a hostile, advanced species, are they?" Yuna asked. She turned to Hana. The first message was, "Return the child," not "surrender or die." It was a simple request. A parent's request. She looked at Jin. "You said the creature, Flutter, was initially docile. Curious. It only changed after that deep hum, after the planet fell silent. It wasn't becoming aggressive. It was being recalled. Its purpose was changed from exploration to defense. Finally, she looked at Sue. "And, Captain, you said it didn't attack your engineer, Chul. It walked past him. It even stopped the plasma leak on your ship. Why would it do that if it wanted to destroy you?" Sue remembered the moment clearly. To preserve the ship. It was taking the ship back. Or, Una said, it was following a primary directive, cause no unnecessary harm. It was retrieving its lost component, the child. Your ship was the container. It was securing its property, not making war. Captain Tay nodded slowly. "You think this is a misunderstanding?" "I think this is a failure of translation," Una corrected. "Not of language, but of context. The consensus saw a primitive world with a valuable intelligent species. They saw a resource. They saw a threat. They never considered that the world itself and everything on it is a single being." The holographic advisor snorted. "A planet-sized organism? That is speculation, is it?" Una asked. "Think about it. No cities because it doesn't need them. No technology as we know it, because its own biology is far more advanced. The flora and fauna are not separate species. They are specialized cells of a vast planetary body. The creatures like Flutter are not individuals. They are mobile sensory organs. Tools. Children of the whole." She let the idea hang in the air. The consensus didn't start a war. They accidentally injured a giant, and when they were told to stop, they poked it in the eye. They committed a cosmic act of bad manners. "So what do you suggest?" the advisor said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "That we send a diplomatic envoy and say we're sorry?" "Yes," Una and Captain Tay said at the same time. The advisor laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "That is suicide, and it is naive." "It is the only option that makes sense," Tay said calmly. "You cannot defeat this being. It has had millions of years to perfect itself. It doesn't conquer because it has no need to. It only defends its garden. Our weapons are like sticks thrown at a mountain, so we just surrender?" Jin asked, his voice trembling. "No," Una said. "We communicate. We show that we are not all like the ones who took the child. We show that we can learn. We apologize." She turned to the hologram. "The consensus strategy of building bigger shields and bigger guns will only prove to this being that we are a uniform, destructive pest. It will escalate its response until every consensus world is silent. Every ship is a floating tree. Humanity has only just joined the galactic community. We are not bound by the consensus's pride." Captain Tay stood up. "The decision is made. The Odyssey will go to XT-77B. We will not bring weapons. We will bring a message." The consensus advisor protested, but his words fell on deaf ears. The humans were going to try a different way. Weeks later, the Odyssey dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the XT-77B system. The planet was still there, green and serene. There was no sign of the battle. The wreckage was gone, absorbed back into the hull. "Power down all non-essential systems," Tay ordered. "Weapon systems are to remain offline and physically disconnected. Hana, open a channel. Broadcast the simple greeting package Una prepared. No complex data, just the basics." Hana sent the signal. It was a series of simple mathematical concepts, universal constants, followed by a recording of the message they had received. "Return the child." There was no response. They moved closer, slowly. The ship was tense. Everyone remembered the fate of the Iron Will. "Anything?" Tay asked. "Nothing," Hana said. "No signals. No energy readings. It's as if it's ignoring us." Una watched the planet on the main screen. "It's not ignoring us. It's watching. It's deciding if we are another threat." They entered orbit. The surface was breathtakingly beautiful. There was no scar, no mark to show that a terrible battle had happened here. "Prepare the shuttle," Tay said. "Sue, Hana, Una, you're with me." The shuttle flight down was smooth. They landed in the same clearing where Jin had first found Flutter. The air was sweet. The forest was alive with the same beautiful melodic sounds they had first recorded. They stepped out, wearing simple environment suits for safety, but without helmets. They wanted to be seen. They carried no weapons. In Una's hands was a small device, a gift she had designed. They did not have to wait long. The forest around the clearing began to change. The trees seemed to shift, their branches moving without wind. The air grew thick. In the center of the clearing, the light began to bend and gather. It formed a shape, a figure made of swirling leaves, glowing moss, and dappled sunlight. It was not Flutter. It was something else, something vast and ancient. It had no clear face, but they could feel its attention on them. It was the presence of the planet. Yuna took a slow step forward. She held up the communication device. It began to project not words, but feelings. It sent waves of concept, regret, sorrow, understanding. It showed an image of the small, furry Flutter. It showed the memory of it being taken. The presence watched, unmoving. Then Yuna spoke aloud, her voice clear and calm in the quiet clearing. "We understand," she said. "We are a young species. We make mistakes. We came to return what was lost. We came to offer a different path." She placed the communication device on the ground and took a step back. The presence shifted. The swirling leaves and light flowed towards the device. It touched it, and the device glowed for a moment before dissolving into the light, becoming a part of the presence. A feeling washed over them, not in words, but in a wave of pure emotion that their minds could understand. It was a profound ancient sorrow. It was the memory of loss, of being alone. It was the pain of being misunderstood by smaller, louder creatures. Then a single concept formed in their minds, clear as glass. "You are the first to listen." The others only screamed. "You are different." The presence began to fade, the light returning to the trees, the leaves settling on the forest floor. The melodic sounds of the forest returned, a little softer now. It was over. Back on the shuttle, no one spoke. They had not been attacked. They had not been threatened. They had been heard. As the shuttle lifted off, Sue looked down at the peaceful, deadly world. He thought of the burned fleets and the panic of the consensus. He thought of the single, unarmed shuttle that had achieved what an entire battle group could not. Humanity had not won a war. They had ended one, not with a bang, but with an apology. They had passed a test the rest of the galaxy had failed. And in doing so, they had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon is not a gun, but the willingness to understand. The shuttle ride back to the Odyssey was filled with a deep, heavy silence. It was not the tense quiet of fear, but the profound stillness that comes after a great storm has passed. Captain Sue stared out the viewport at the receding green world. He did not see a monster anymore. He saw a being of immense, lonely power. He saw a parent who had gotten its child back. Hana sat with her eyes closed, replaying the feeling of the presence in her mind. It had not been words. It had been a direct transfer of emotion, of memory. She had felt its ancient sadness, its long history of watching other species rise, make noise, and then fade away, never understanding the quiet giant in their midst. Yuna simply looked tired. The weight of the first contact, of being the one to speak for all of humanity, had drained her. But a small, quiet smile rested on her lips. They had done it. They had found a different way. When they docked with the Odyssey, the crew looked at them with a mixture of awe and relief. Captain Tay was waiting for them in the hangar. "Report," he said, his voice calm. Yuna spoke for the group. "It's over. They accepted our apology. They understood." Tay simply nodded. He had trusted her theory, and she had been right. The consensus is demanding a full debrief. They are calling it the human capitulation. Sue let out a short, bitter laugh. "Capitulation? We just stopped a war that would have wiped them out." "That is not how they see it," Tay said. "To them, we bowed to an enemy. We showed weakness. It will have consequences." The consequences came quickly. The Galactic Consensus declared the XT-77B system forbidden. All human ships were temporarily restricted from consensus military channels. They were called unreliable allies. The official story became that humanity had made a separate, cowardly peace with a hostile force. But a different story spread through the lower levels of the galaxy, through merchant crews and independent pilots. It was the story of the humans who walked unarmed onto the killer world and talked it down. It was a story of sense in a time of madness. Back on the bridge of the Odyssey, Sue stood with Hana and Jin, looking at the planet one last time before they jumped away. "It doesn't seem fair," Jin said softly. "We did the right thing, the only sane thing, and we get punished for it." Hana shook her head. "We didn't do it for a reward, Jin. We did it to survive. And we did it because it was right." Sue said nothing. He was thinking about Flutter. He wondered if it was back in the forest, warbling its melodic songs, its job as a soldier done. He thought of Chul and the others who had died on the morning star. Their deaths had not been meaningless. They had been a terrible lesson, a price paid for the galaxy's ignorance, a lesson that only humanity had been willing to learn. Captain Tay joined them at the viewport. "The galaxy is a big place," he said. "The consensus's opinion is not the only one. We have shown another way. That knowledge is now out there. It is a seed." "A seed for what?" Jin asked. Tay looked at the peaceful planet. "For the next time someone encounters something they don't understand. Maybe next time they will try talking before they start shooting." He gave the order. The Odyssey turned away from the green jewel and powered up its engines. In a flash of light, it was gone. Years passed. The official condemnation of humanity softened, but a distance remained. Humans were seen as strange, as unpredictable. They did not always follow the consensus's rules of engagement. They valued different things. On a new world recently discovered on the fringe of known space, a small human survey team was exploring a canyon. The team was led by a young woman named Jimin. Her communications expert was a man named Dae-ho. They found a cave and inside a discovery. It was a creature unlike anything they had seen. It was trapped under a fallen rock, injured and scared. It had sharp claws and glowing eyes. It looked dangerous. Dae-ho raised his scanner. "Its biosigns are off the charts, Jimin. It looks hostile. Standard protocol says we fall back and call for a military biohazard team." Jimin looked at the creature. It was trying to free itself, its movements frantic. It wasn't attacking. It was afraid. She remembered the stories from her training. The old story of the Morning Star and the Odyssey. The story of a planet that was a living mind and the humans who listened. "Put your scanner away," Jimin said. "What? Why? Just do it." Dae-ho lowered the scanner, confused. Jimin slowly took off her heavy gear, placing it on the ground. She approached the trapped creature, her hands open and empty. "Jimin, what are you doing? It could be lethal." "Maybe," Jimin said, her voice calm. She knelt a short distance from the creature. It stopped struggling and watched her, its glowing eyes wide. It hissed, a warning. Jimin didn't move. She just waited. She showed no fear, no threat. Slowly, the creature's hissing stopped. It watched her, curious. After a long moment, Jimin very slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out a field ration. She broke off a piece and tossed it gently near the creature. It sniffed the air, then cautiously nibbled the food. Jimin then pointed at the rock trapping the creature. She looked at Dae-ho. "Help me lift this carefully." Dae-ho, his heart pounding, came forward. Together they lifted the heavy rock. The creature, now free, scrambled back. It looked at them for a long moment. Then it made a soft, chuffing sound, turned, and disappeared into the darkness of the cave. Dae-ho let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. That was against every protocol. "We could have been killed." Jimin stood up, brushing the dust from her knees. She smiled. "Or we could have started a war." She looked back into the dark cave where the creature had vanished. "Not everything that looks dangerous is an enemy. Sometimes it's just scared. Sometimes it's just different." She picked up her gear. "Well done, team. Let's go home." As they walked back to their shuttle, Dae-ho thought about what had just happened. He thought about the old stories. He understood now. The lesson of XT-77B wasn't just about one planet. It was a new way to see the universe. Humanity's place in the galaxy was not to be the strongest or the most lethal. Their strength was their curiosity, their empathy, their willingness to reach out with an open hand instead of a closed fist. They had started a war by being careless. But they had started something else too. Something quieter and much, much stronger. A way of peace in a universe full of noise. And that, in the end, was a much greater victory.